everyone, and welcome to the Sporting Global podcast. And today we have a very new format here going. We have sort of like an interactive podcast with Mikel. And Mikel, it's a pleasure having you here. How are you? How's life?
All is well. Continuing a beautiful day here in sunny Florida. Just wrapping up a big session today on the track and getting ready for a nice productive work day.
That's awesome. And I mean, like, you can't really complain going straight into an interactive podcast with Sporting Global.
Not at all. It's a great morning cap.
Right. And I mean, like, being in South Florida too, I remember I visited Miami not too long ago too, before the pandemic. It's just amazing. It's something different. It's good just being in South Florida and getting that experience. But for those of you that, are listening to this and maybe are seeing like all these faces in the background on the top there. So what I was saying, like, we have a new format that we're trying out today, and that's sort of like a way of like, how can we, bring in you guys, like the students, to like be part of this, being a little bit closer than just, listening to the videos or the podcast itself. Is like being part of it and feeling, okay, this is my chance to talk to Mikel, to ask him questions or other people down the road. And of course, if you like to hear, key advice from people like Mikel, like others, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And of course, all of you that are here, make sure to do so if you haven't already. It's going to help us a lot. Maybe write like a comment as well of like what you thought was great about the video. And maybe you have some questions for Mikel that you can put it down in your comments. So Mikel, we're gonna start right to like into the core question, and that's sort of like, how did your love for sports come up, and I guess like the passion for hurdling?
That is a really good question. My journey started on the beautiful Twin Islands of Trinidad and Tobago, where track and field is probably one of the easiest to access sports because you're just running. And so on the island, to see who's the fastest person was just what you did. But it probably wasn't until our family immigrated to New York City, where I was just a typical high school kid running in the hallways, and I got snatched by the dean. And he put me in of detention or track practice. And I think the fact that I'm definitely an advocate for sport for development, giving sport and using it as a tool to give youths a different option in life, it definitely helped me make the best decision, clearly, because I've run around the world twice by now. But that's really what it started as. It started as an opportunity to put myself and my energy into a craft, and it developed into something that really molded me and helped me discover more about myself by discovering the world around me. But honestly, the hurdles, the event itself, I got into it first to try to make myself a little bit more attractive to the U.S. college collegiate system in recruiting. But the one hurdles specifically because someone told me I couldn't. And so I stand a strong 5'8" in a 6-foot dominated event. And I just did not like the idea of someone telling me what I can or can't do. And I proved myself right rather than proving other people wrong.
That's awesome. And I mean, like, I think, that's sort of like getting that doubt, to your, like, that someone is just like, you can't do that. It just kicks like something different, right? And I think we all, that are, somehow in part of the sport industry, either as sport professionals or athletes, it's sort of like, we love showing people, that we can prove ourselves, and that, whatever you say, like, we'll do it our way and we can make things work. So I think it's very, very important story. And obviously you're 3 times Olympian, preparing for the 4th, coming up. And I wanted to sort of like hear first and foremost, like, you've been part of the Olympics. Like, how is that experience at all? Like, just like from, being part of it, like, what have you learned? What have you seen, like, during the 3 that you've been part of so far? And like, what changes have you seen essentially?
First off, there's nothing like walking into an Olympic stadium for an opening ceremony.
Can imagine.
The nervousness, the rush of emotion, the spine-tingling atmosphere when your country is called and you're marching across that stage. the lights are dark, and the next thing you know, you're in an explosion of emotion as people just celebrate the moment.
Right.
One like no other. I think my favorite games would definitely have to be Beijing 2008 because it was my first. So
Right.
there was
A little bit extra
newness.
nervous.
It was just the newness of everything in and around you. You're seeing people like Kobe, rest in peace. You're seeing like Serena Williams. You're seeing global stars, Messi from all over the place, all in the same place. And then you're like, wait, I'm here too. And so
Right.
20-year-old in my first Olympics, it was just like mind boggling. And then it's after that, every other Olympics was a business trip. So mentality shifts as you kind of evolve.
Right.
That's sometimes a good and a bad thing. But this year, God willing, as I go for my fourth, it's an opportunity to it's a celebration of a career and hopefully plant seeds for the next generation. This is it for me. So it's a nice way to cap off an amazing career and contribute back to the sport to ensure that other people can do greater things.
That's awesome. I mean, like, I guess, you know, from being like from the first one in 2008, and of course, as I said, I assume like, you know, going to Beijing is in itself, you know, it's just like, wow, you know, it was something different. And I know like that major event got a lot of, you know, publicity and a lot of exposure because of how they did things. It was sort of like a new way in many ways of the Olympics. But what are some of like, I guess, like the changes that you saw being part of like, you know, 3 Olympic events, and sort of like from the first one to like, okay, your last one, and even like going into now of like, what were some like the key things I guess you've been seeing that you're like, wow, this is different, like it just goes in a different direction?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been very fortunate to be a part of 3 different Olympic Games in 3 different continents. That's
Right.
3 different, you know, from Beijing in '08 to London in 2012 to Rio in 2016. And those who understand the business of sport, every one of those markets are very intricately different. There's certain nuances in how the games are experienced both as an athlete and as a fan. So there's huge evolutions that I've been able to see from a greater emphasis on the entertainment side of the sport, from how opening ceremony to even London's opening ceremony, how we engage with the fans on a regular basis, the stories that we tell behind the athletes. There's a lot more. The rise of social media. 2008 didn't even this. 2012 was creeping, and you can guarantee, especially with no fans and allowed in 2021 and 2020 Olympics in Tokyo, there's going to be a bigger need for that social media to interact directly with a lot of you sporting fans. And so there's a lot of that digitization that has been an evolution. There's a lot more of that personalization because the athletes starting to come up more on the front side and matching people's passion points. I think we care about the organizations that we align with. We're not seeing the McDonald's in the same capacity as it was in the beginning. And who knows where things are going to be in the future, but companies are starting to align with society, and sport is one of those very cool places where what happens in sport kind of is a representation of what can happen globally. Because sports has a win-lose column, because we're fighting for equity, because we're fighting for sustainability, because we're challenging companies and organizations to do certain things differently, it's just a representation of what we're asking for society to do overall.
No, I think it's a really interesting, you know, shift, and probably like the 2021, 2022, you know, Olympics will definitely be like, you know, the what can I say, the tech Olympics. And maybe, you know, put a lot of, I guess, the guidelines of like how future Olympic events will be, you know, in a sense. And I think it will be a very interesting learning experience. And I guess from your side too, of just like, you know, comparing that to your 2008 Olympic and just see like how far it's come, right? And so like just what have changed, you know, since then. And Just to move a little bit on, because obviously now, when and through the time of you being an Olympic athlete, you've been obviously, balancing both your academic, your professional work, working for visa. And I guess like all of us are sort of like, students, maybe not like, competing at the highest level, but we all been involved in sports at some point. And then just like thinking like, whoa, how do you balance, competing like and preparing for Olympic, being an Olympic athlete, and then just working for visa, taking your graduate degree and so forth, and just like what tips do you have on that side, and how do you structure your day to make this work?
Good question. It's an ongoing experiment, to tell you the truth. But one thing that definitely helped is time management. Yeah, it's a little bit of cliche, but I think Arnold Schwarzenegger said, everybody's kind of given 24 hours is how you use it and what you do with it. I remember him saying a comment about how much sleep that you actually need. You should sleep harder. Well, there's things that you can do smarter as well. So we're all given the same amount of hours. Is how you really get a chance to use your day. The idea also that right now, because of the pandemic, we get a lot of time back because we're not traveling and commuting as we used to.
Right.
So in many cases, I'm in a very unique situation. And even when I was in Switzerland studying at AISTS, there was facilities right across the street that I was able to access. So time management is one. Throughout my whole career, I've always been a dual athlete, whether it was coaching at the NCAA level or becoming a firefighter in Clayton County in Georgia, to again now working with corporate America. I've always had to do something else simultaneously. Right. It's the other part of sport that only in track and field maybe 10% are actually making living wages. That's a whole nother conversation. So many of us have to find a way to sustain ourselves. I've always had to find something else. Plus, it was also helpful for me in the identity portion, because sport is a tough place where many athletes would rest their identity. But I've been in a position where one day the media loves me, the next day I failed because I came fourth in Shanghai. Doesn't make sense. But because of that up and down, it's a hard place to just rest who you were as a person. So I had to chose to discover what else I was capable of doing. And being a dual athlete allowed me to turn up here and then decompress and to be able to shift my mental energy rather than being so locked in. At a younger stage in your career, I can see it's beneficial. As you get older, you have more demands on your life. So just knowing what's important to you, managing your time and your relationships well. And at the end of the day, the part that no one likes to say is there will be sacrifice. There's a cost to every decision that you make.
Right.
So there's a understanding what it takes to be an Olympian, understanding what it takes to successfully have careers will come at a cost of social, financial, relational, those type of things. But I understand that for a period of time, and those that are part of this journey, they understand as well. And that makes the matter. It's about quality over quantity.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's some really insightful thoughts there. And I guess, like, as a follow-up on that, too, of like how has sort of like that planning, or I guess structuring, changed from like, if you go a little bit back into maybe like the previous Olympics and then to now, right? Like of now you're sort of like balancing more of a professional career with going into your fourth one. And I guess like, sort of like how is that sort of like, has there been any changes, or like what is some of those changes like if you go like more specifically, I guess?
Definitely. I mean, in the NCAA, being a dual athlete is almost like mandatory, and most of the decisions are done for you. On a professional level, you have to be able to manage those decisions for yourself. And then get a little bit older and you have more demands on you, more responsibilities, more bills that you're adulting now. You have to deal with a lot of those things. There's a shift in understanding how to prioritize. And so even now, you have to manage your energy, you have to manage your emotions, you have to manage the things that you go into. And it's not just about every individual is a leader, every individual has to run their self. I'm very logical in this. It's the firefighter in me. I'm also very contingency based. And so I make everything as black and white as possible, even though I understand those are shades of gray. But by creating as many plans as possible, I at least have an option, because the scariest thing for many people is the unknown. And so when I face a situation, I try to write it down, even what might step in my way, because as a hurdler, I technically clear hurdles and obstacles for a living. But if I close my eyes to my obstacles, I will probably run directly in them and not be able to finish the race. So by at least listing what some of the obstacles you have, what are some of the priorities that you have, you can at least have an opportunity to create a plan towards attacking them. So that's what I try to do now, especially. It's like we called it in firefighting, name it to tame it. You have to understand what the problem, what the objective is, in order for yourself to actually get a chance to attack it. If you close your eyes, it's still going to exist.
Right.
You might as well give yourself the best opportunity to do something about it.
So I guess sort of like the hurdling sport is sort of like a perfect way to represent if you like if you don't open your eyes and plan ahead, you're gonna get knocked down by those by those walls that are there. So I guess like it's a good reference for like also like planning ahead and overcoming those barriers. If not, you won't get far in hurdling either. So that's but moving on a little bit into like obviously now you're working with Visa as the development of their Olympic and Paralympic programs, and what are some of like specifically programs that you are working on? I guess like you can't share everything, but the things that you can share, like what are some of the programs that you are working on, and I guess like what are some of the key responsibilities you have there?
Yeah, so Visa is one of those few companies who definitely have a strong say in a lot of sporting entities, from the NFL to FIFA to, of course, the Olympic movement. And one thing that we're trying to do is make sure that we have as many touch points as a passion-based company to show that we actually care about these things and it's just not logo plastering. So one of the things is this Olympic Business Development Program allows Olympians, Paralympians the opportunity to kind of transition into the world of business. I have had some business experience before, so that allows me the opportunity plus a master's degree to really take charge of my career. Because the problem that a lot of athletes face is as they progress professionally on their sport, they not necessarily have the same opportunities to develop professionally in their career. So this is one of those few that actually give those opportunities. In the work that I've done so far, in a rotational base where I get the opportunity to dabble in different elements within the organization, and again, showing our commitment to the Olympic movement. I've done everything from helping your mobile device to become a payment opportunity and a mobile wallet to helping enable small businesses, which is I do a lot of work right now in small business enablement, outreach, and advocacy, and showing how we can help rebuild our society as we get out of this pandemic situation. So from different partnerships that we have within the sporting community and tying that with our core businesses and getting back into communities, that's what we try to do. So of course, there's a core business where payments industry driving engine of commerce, but we have strong relationships within the sporting community and other communities as well. So strengthening communities, and that's the main thing that I'm able to do. And I'm really honored to be a part of a lot of that advocacy work.
And it is a really important work too, from like not only of course like you being, I guess in a sense, from both sides and understanding, both sides of the table too, but I guess like from, as you were talking about earlier too, with sort of like you see less and less of those, how can I say, typical sponsors, right? Of like, okay, it was a money thing, or like just like, okay, I want to associate myself with it because you can reach a lot of people, right? But now it's like you see the core brands like Visa, like others, of course, representing, like tying that into the Olympics and the movement and finding organizations and stuff that like complements with that values, right? So I guess like a lot of the work that you're focusing on too, and like bringing back to community, it's a big thing, because it represents or like what sports is all about. It's the community. It's like having an opportunity for everyone, and what's better way to do that than the Olympics and Visa, right? To like spread accessibility, I guess, in a sense, to everyone.
Because if you think about it this way, The Olympic movement really benefits as well for this, because I'm in now situations and conversations where I can say, oh, I'm an Olympian. Oh, I'm looking forward to watching you this summer. That's advertising the Olympic movement in a space with an audience that they may not have the opportunity to reach. And in the same sense, through sports, we can now interject how we can help people flow money and exchange a lot easier. And so how do you create more touch points? That's how I hope sponsorship will continue to move, because we've seen through the pandemic, it can't have the same typical thing if sports are no longer existing. So how can we make that everyday conversation something that the relationship can be displayed?
That's awesome. And I want to touch a little bit on, of course, like the fact that you are on both sides of the table, because I guess like this is a very, you know, we have to talk about that, because in a sense that's just a very interesting element, especially as an Olympic athlete. I mean, like you can say, okay, like I'm a professional player or whatever, and working maybe for an organization, but it, like, what have been, I guess, some of the key points that you've been learning, that you're taking towards on your journey towards developing these sports programs from sitting on both sides of the table, and I guess how has that sort of like been affecting your communication? Because again, you understanding more of what the different requirements are on each side.
You know, from the athlete's perspective, there's a definitely gaining the understanding of what corporations and partnerships are looking for, learning how to create that win-win type of situation, understanding your worth on both sides of the table. What do you bring as a corporation rather than just a check? And then what do you bring as an asset, whether you're looking for sponsorship of an event or for a team or for yourself as an individual? What do you bring that you can have the opportunity to not just monetize, but expand? And that's really helps. If you, like you said, if you have the ability to sit on both sides of the conversation, everybody has an intention. By understanding the intention, you can help now create some continuity with the conversation. And so what do the teams need? What does the sports side need? And what's the bottom line that a lot of businesses are looking for in that partnership? And how can we make it better for, at the end of the day, the end user, the fans, that it's just not a logo on a jersey that doesn't make sense when it's like, why is this person even sponsoring it? When fans and people engage and they know it's just about the money, there's less buy-in. So the whole purpose behind the sponsorship is in a sense lost. So creating that story is also a major part, because now I can put more life to the Visa products and services in the conversation, because I can see the touch points, which is the main thing, is how can we make this an everyday conversation outside of the match, outside of the game, outside of the Olympics. And that's what is a really beneficial thing to do.
And I guess like from like a personal perspective, you know, as an athlete too, of like just working on your own sort of agreements and partnerships and sponsorships, then how has that sort of like impacted your communication, I guess, with these sort of brands and entities?
Great question. Everything now is more purpose driven. It's not just about the check. It's more about how is this relationship helping me achieve my individual vision, and do our visions align? So for example, next month is Mental Awareness Month. What organizations care about mental awareness? Because we've seen through the pandemic, that's something that's very significant that everyone faced. So that's an issue that we can collaborate on. You're looking for more cohesive collaborations. And so you have the ability now to say no, because what's your North Star? What's your main objective that you're really trying to, if you go into a meeting with a sense of desperation, you've already lost. And so if you understand the value and the purpose behind a lot of the things that you're going to, it's okay to be like, oh, you know what, this is not the project for this partnership, but let's continue to relationship and hopefully find something else. And I think that really helps you achieve more stronger metrics and impact on the things that you're really attempting to do.
And I guess that's sort of like a key lesson for, you know, whether you're a startup, like a company, athlete, you know, or looking for branding or sponsor, is that and even like, for students looking for a career, like of finding relevant opportunities, and you gotta sort of like look at the big picture. Does this align with what I stand for and what I believe in, right? And that will be sort of like key moving forward. And we talk a lot about this from Sporting Global's perspective too, of like, how do we help our users matching with sports organization that they align with, because at the end of the day, if you have a sponsor or like a brand is sponsoring this event that align, like it's such a higher chance of creating, an impact and a value that will be beneficial for both parties. And that's the end of the day, what is the key metrics here, right?
That's definitely the main thing. For me personally, the journey has been, it evolves from just the big partner or the particular title or role to what are the key values that are being displayed. Even in the attempt to join Visa, is the fact that them as an organization, their mission and values match mine, then the work becomes more meaningful. And that's the main thing. That allows you, again, that North Star ideas, a central point to where you can guide and direct. What are you really about? Am I about the same thing?
Right.
Then let's get together. If that is a very beautiful and powerful relationship, and you don't need many of those, you just need strong, again, quality over quantity. So as you're looking for sponsorships or you're looking for opportunities, you may get 100 no's, but you only need one yes. And that's the.
And it's also like, as you talk a little bit about too, it's fine saying no. It's fine just like, okay, if you feel like this actually doesn't align with what I believe in, or if this is a company or brand that is like, you know what, we're in two different specters, it doesn't work, then that's fine. And it's better pursuing, and finding that organization or that brand that, okay, here we can achieve great things together, than just taking whatever it is out there. And of course, I'm not saying like explore your options and think about it opportunities, but be more selective, I guess, going back to your quality before quantity approach. And to sort of like wrap up, I guess, of our conversation here, I wanted to like just hear a little bit, I guess, from a standpoint of like, if you put on your sport professional glasses, sport business professional glasses here, and I'm like, you already have them on, so that's there. And I guess like, for providing some tips for students that feel like, okay, I want to be part of the Olympic movement in like any kind of capacity, like what are some of the key elements, I guess, that they should have in back of their mind? Like, how do they understand the mechanisms a little bit better? Because as I said, there's very few that are in your position that are able to sort of like be on both sides of the table. And, whether you're an athlete or you're a sport business professional, like what are some of the things that you should keep in mind, going forward now?
That's a really good question. And I think it's being true to the experience that you have. Authenticity is always going to be the key thing. One of the main things is sometimes you have to understand what are the pain points, what are the issues that an organization is really facing, and do you want to be a part of the solution? So like you talked about different themes that appeared in different Olympic games prior. Well, we're going to see a huge boom in technology because of Tokyo. We're probably going to see a strive for sustainability within Paris, and LA is going to change the game. Can you trend and see what's happening? I have some ideas, but maybe I'll keep that one in my pocket. There's different themes.
We'll talk about that after the podcast.
That's the thing. Like, there's different themes in society that, again, sport has the ability to embody and press the issue at the given time. And so if you're able to see and identify that, then you can understand the needs that a lot of organizations are facing. So for example, because of the pandemic, sponsorship was one of the hot topics that happened. So how can we reinvent how we engage with these partnerships? So understand, man, as a fan, my experience is I can't watch my sport in the same capacity as I have in the past. What would you want to do? Well, can we digitize it? Can we go to OTT services? Can we do something in that capacity? If that's what you would experience, then that's the solution that an organization is looking for. And so understanding the authentic experience that you're having and finding a way to plan that out and hopefully making the connections, your network is going to be a major, major player. They told you before, tell you again, it's not always about what you know, but who you know, and being in the right connections with people. It definitely helps. And sometimes you can reach out to someone on LinkedIn or through this network and just ask a question out of genuine interest, because a lot of people are willing to help. Not, oh, I need a job, but what are your thoughts on, I've read this, that you've written that. I would love you to expand on that. People love to talk about themselves. So that's an easy
100%.
easy way to get in. Show
100%.
some genuine curiosity on the subjects that you care about. And at the right time, the best job is the one when they call for you. And that will come from the network that you've built. So be authentic to your experience. Try to solve some of your own pain points and find, again, the connection of who's looking for that solution or trying to solve that same problem.
I mean, like, I think it's a perfect way to segment into our second part of this interactive podcast, where, I mean, like, it's not just me and you, Mikel, that are on the table here. And I guess, like, we're gonna open the floor for the students involved here to ask their question to Mikel and bring that up. And Nikki, I don't know if you wanna, like, if you already put this in gallery view, but yeah, I see Fanny's already having a question here, so I'll let you dive right into it.
Cool, thanks. So hi, I'm Fanny, tuning in from Oslo. It was a pleasure to listen to you, so thank you for that. My question is, I'm actually currently writing a paper about augmented reality and the Olympics.
Nice.
So I was thinking, my question through the paper has also been, at what point does the technology disrupt us from enjoying the actual moment? When does this become too much? And I wanted to hear your opinion on the increased focus on technology, and if it can extend to where it doesn't even serve the same purpose as we intended to.
And a great question. Technology will always move at a pace faster than society. And because of that, it will make people uncomfortable. I love augmented reality. I've done some things around it, especially around the Winter Youth Olympics, where we did some concussion protocol type things. It's pretty sick what you have the ability to do. But the power of sports is live. That's the one thing that we love about sports, the fact that it's live. You don't know what's about to happen. But with the rise of social media, what we love is interaction. We like to feel like we're the fly on the wall and we're getting the inside experience. So if there's a way that you can give a different experience that people are looking for from augmented reality, but not necessarily compete with the live asset, then you can create space. So what we've seen in some major events is they'll create fan experiences that are augmented, where they'll actually take fans into a practice, or they'll take a fan onto the pitch, or they'll take a fan into the arena. That type of experience doesn't necessarily compete, but it makes the overall experience more robust. So if you can find a particular experience that fans are looking for, then you have the give that. Imagine if you could do a walkthrough of one of your favorite football or Olympic stadiums as an athlete through augmented reality. Here's a free one. What does a fan, what would it look like, or what would it feel like? Especially, this is $1 million one, especially since fans are not going to be allowed in the Olympic Games, right? And athletes are the ones that get the opportunity to walk down that opening ceremony. I would love that augmented.
Yeah.
Imagine let's be honest, fans will never experience that. That moment where your name and your country is called. What if they could? Find something
some really great insights, Fanny, and some cool ideas already there, Mikel. Ryan, you want to go into the next one here?
Yes, absolutely, Mikel. First off, I just want to say thank you so much for spending some time with us. I had a different kind of question. So mine is, when was a time in your life when you failed at a task, did not perform up to your standards, or circumstances were out of your control? And how did you learn from it and move on? Do you have any tips on how to move on after a misstep in life?
Ooh, that's $1 million PhD question. I have two situations that I can tell you. There was one time when I was homeless because our funding system failed. I was literally on my way to the Commonwealth Games and I got kicked out of the place that I was staying in. So obviously the Commonwealth Games was a complete disaster for me. Complete disaster. And it was because there was some structural issues that we were facing back in my home country. What I decided to do was be vulnerable and, again, authentic to my experience. I honestly answered every reporter, how can you expect me to compete when I don't even have a place to live? I'm ready to go home. That turned into a major story. And then what I chose to do is, rather than be feared by the idea of being blacklisted, I took on the fight, and we were able to help make some corrections to a system that is benefiting many more athletes. Another opportunity there is, I remember at the World Championships in 2015, I was expected to make the final and potentially medal, and I fell in the prelims. You can find pictures of that online, great ones. But I honestly felt like it was an opportunity for me to learn what a champion really looks like. And it's not what I win, but what I can overcome. And the fact that the spotlight was on me, the pressure was on me. I won the Pan Am medal, I won the NACAC championship, and I failed at the World Championship, but I got up and I finished my race. To know that you can get up is more powerful than knowing that you can win, because you learn more from a loss than you do from a victory. Because if you think that's what it takes to win, you just repeat and do the same thing over and over, rather than find a new way to get to cross the finish line. That's what it takes. So be authentic and be innovative, and actually allow yourself to feel the things and to overcome it.
Wow, perfect. Thank you so much. That was really powerful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
No doubt.
Awesome, Ryan. It was a great question and some good insights there as well, Mikel. And Diogo, you wanna put in your question?
For sure, OLY. Thank you. Hi, Mikel. Good afternoon. Coming in from Portugal, this question. Wanted to get into a controversial topic a little bit. Don't take me the wrong way. But I'm not from the US, and considering what I see, and considering your experience and the mediatic growth of college sports, do you think NCAA athletes should get paid?
Great question. And this is the part that a lot of people don't speak on. This is just my personal opinion. The major sports that make money within college sports is football and basketball. So American football and basketball. The way the structure works, the money that comes from those two sports trickle down to all of the small sports. I'll give you both sides of the argument. The amount of money in the TV contracts for a nonprofit organization exceeds billions of dollars. Yet a lot of people like to say that the amount of money that you earn for a scholarship covers it. But if you had an academic scholarship, you can actually earn way more money than if you had an athletic scholarship. There's enough research to show that. Because as an athlete, you don't have the ability to work. So I can't earn any living. I can't earn money. So you are making a profit off of my image and rights, but yet I'm unable to earn anything until I graduate. Legitimate argument. However, if you pay the athletes, you only get the chance to pay the ones that are from the high earning sports. So sports like gymnastics, swimming, track and field, wrestling, what will happen to them? Because the big boys feed the small ones. And that's what allow a lot of equality amongst the sports. So it's a tough situation, because a track and field athlete, the amount of money that the NCAA makes for their sport is nowhere near the equivalent, the amount of money that they would make for NCAA football. So if you charge for one, what would you pay the other? That's the tough part.
I mean, that's a good point. Yeah. As I said, this question is just a conceptual question from what I see coming in from the outside. So there's not much I can debate on that. But I clearly see your point. But whenever you're in the Olympics and you see they introducing the athletes, they always talk about like a university champion. He won the NCAA champion. And that seems to be as relevant as someone who won the European champion. So Absolutely. At what point can you compare those two, and paying ones in Europe and not the other ones in the US? That's kind of an interesting thing to think about, like how you compare those two.
That is a great question. And it's really hard to compare the two, because the European system and the US system is different in many ways. The benefit of the NCAA is there's an already established structure. And because of that, the competition amongst itself is so elite. winning an NCAA championship in any event is literally, like you said, winning a European championship. But you could be a European champion and earn a living in Europe, and you can be an NCAA champion and you're entering lottery to get a sponsorship contract. That's what it is. It's a chance that you will get an endorsement. It's not a guarantee, because who wins the NCAA 100 meters versus who wins the shot put is not necessarily going to be an equality of contracts. But if you were to ask a question about the Olympic movement, that's a whole nother monster, because the NCAA versus who gets paid at the Olympics, which is also another structure that the athletes do not get paid from. That one is a little bit more tricky.
Okay, that goes along with my second question. I don't know if I can still make it, Ole. It's okay.
Let's dive a little bit over, but I wanted to just open, I guess, like some thoughts from Nikki, Fanny, and Ryan, who's like, in I guess like studying in the US and being part of the closest, I guess, from like our American side here, to like just share a little bit. I don't know if you guys have any like comments or thoughts that you want to jump in on this at all.
I can jump in quickly. I only got to live in the US for 2 months before the pandemic hit, and I moved back to Oslo. But for me, I've been to the US plenty of times for vacations, and I was really looking forward to moving there. But it was sort of a culture shock, more than I could even have thought, especially just now during sports class. All we're talking about is college, and I had no idea. And it's just, I think it's so interesting how a world that unitely loves sports so much still interpreted so differently. And personally, sports is one of the biggest, labor markets in the world. An athlete from Jamaica has a 10 times bigger chance to get a job in Europe than, let's say, a doctor has from the same country. And yeah, just living in different countries throughout the years has just made me realize how incredible athletes and sports and everything is to unite the world, basically.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, if Nikki or Ryan you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about the whole, should NCAA athletes be paid? I also see it from both sides. I remember in our sport law class, one of the professors asked me a question, and I always see things from both sides, so I can argue why they should be paid. I can also make the argument why they shouldn't. So, I mean, overall, I think all of the athletes should get paid a little bit, in terms of they make literally millions, if not sometimes billions of dollars for these schools, and they use their name, image, likeness. I know that's a huge issue, and you see them on video games, or at least you used to. Now with the whole, gaming issue, a lot of gamings don't make really NCAA games like before. So a lot of these athletes, they're being used, they're being replicated, and a lot of times they're coming out with zero. So I can see it from that point of view. To argue from the university standpoint, you can say that they give them free housing, priority registration, they get access to the weight room. So it's a very complicated issue, but if I personally were to lean more towards one side, I would be more with the student athletes, just because I was a swimmer in college. So I've gone through the long practices, and then 2 hours of practice, and then an hour of strength and conditioning, and then, do extra practice on the side, and then go to class and get home late, and then wake up at 5, 6 in the morning and do it all over again. So it's very complex. It's crazy, but I know in Florida, I think in June, the student athletes are going to start getting paid. Mikel, please excuse me if I'm incorrect, but I think starting in like May or June, they're going to start getting paid. At least in Florida, the law passed.
I thought there was a case in California and in Florida as well.
Yeah.
But just to throw more fuel to the fire, one of the other issues is, well, of course, if you go to the University of Florida, or you go to UCLA, or you go to University of Texas, that's great. But if you go to Mount Olive College in North Carolina, right, how are their athletes going to get paid? So then there's going to be a discrepancy issue then. So all the talent is going to go to the big schools, which they already do. I'm a graduate of the University of Kentucky. So obviously, if I can get paid at Kentucky, then now not going to go to West Virginia, for example. So then there becomes an equality issue because a lot of that money, according to the NCAA, also gets distributed amongst other schools from Division I, Division II, and down the chain. But again, this is just fuel for the argument for you to do your research and to make a decision, because it is a hard life. I remember as an athlete, I used to ask our freshmen for a meal swipe because I didn't have money for food. That was a real life issue for a lot of people. So is there equality really happening? And I went to a big school. It's a tough one, but I think the decision needs to be made. I think the athletes should get paid, or at least have the opportunity to earn wages, which they currently can. For example, if I sign an autograph at an event and someone wants to pay me for it, I would lose my eligibility for my own signature. That doesn't make sense. So there's so much gray area and so much questions that needs to be tackled. But again, the system is still very archaic. There needs to be some sort of change. Something has to change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, me personally, I think they should be able to get sponsored. Like if Nike or someone wants to come sponsor them, what's wrong? It's like they're trying to make a living. And just like how you said, you went up to the student and asked for the card. I remember one time we were coming back from a swim meet and we stopped by this place and I had no money. And then my teammate had to pay for me and I felt bad.
And you're going to see a rise of this issue, which has already been happening because of social media and the ability to earn, like TikTok and YouTube. There already have been high school athletes who have foregone their eligibility to be an influencer because they can earn more money on YouTube and TikTok. And the fact that they can pay their way to school and lose out on the eligibility also sparks an argument to that conversation. So if every person entering college now has a TikTok or a YouTube page or Instagram, and they're able to earn money, and you're telling me as an athlete, I can't profit off of my personal page, that's also part of the problem.
Absolutely.
So let's move on. I want to make sure we have the time to get the question from Lana and Pedro too. But Lana, you wanna jump into your question?
Yes. Hi. So I'm Lana. I'm currently in Barcelona. So I wanted to ask you. You talked a lot about saying no in your like choosing who's gonna sponsor you, who has the same alignment in some kind of visions you have for your future objectives and stuff like that. But what about those who don't have the ability to say no? Because I come from a small country and our like national Olympic organization is not very well known to fund our athletes with the good amounts of money. So a lot of athletes go to other countries because they get better treatments there and similar stuff. So what about those who can't say no and have to turn to other options?
Great question. I was in that situation. I can honestly tell you I've earned more money outside of Trinidad and Tobago than I did inside of Trinidad and Tobago, capitalizing a lot on the European and the US markets, even the Australian market. I've never been to Australia. And so thing is, you have to go outside of your network. Social media allows you the opportunity to expand that. I can cater content strictly for the Asian market just by what time I post it. That's what you have the ability to do. And so just like some physically move, sometimes you have to just change your market. That's one thing. And you still can find alignment with a company in Denmark, even though you're from Trinidad and Tobago. Because at the end of the day, the content that you're capable of creating doesn't care where it's originated from. It cares about who it reaches. And so that's what I would challenge a lot of athletes and individuals to do, is find the alignment even outside of your current network. So same thing, like if I was looking for a school and no school in my community is offering what I want, what would I do? I would look at a school outside in another country, another region. Same thing with market when it comes. So you always have the ability to say no, because no is a complete sentence. So you just have to find somewhere else. I don't try to take it personally. I try to treat it as a numbers game. And so if the 100 people within my country all said no, then I need a new country to look into. And then when I've done that, then I do that. All I need is one yes. So I'll keep applying yourself and expand the network and the market as much as possible. Find the niche, solve the problem, and connect the dots.
Thank you.
No doubt.
All right, Pedro, you wanna wrap up with your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure listening to your story. Very inspirational, Michael. I'm also in South Florida. I'm in Boca Raton. I don't know exactly where you are, but my question to kind of keep going with the controversial ones that they started was, you know, you mentioned technology in the beginning and how it's moving way faster than society. And there has been a debate going on between esports and traditional sports. Do you think eventually esports could become part of the Olympic Games from someone who knows exactly how hard it takes to get there? What do you think? What's your opinion about it?
The goal of the Olympic Games is always to be a representation of some of the core values of society. And so the addition of some sports, particularly, let's say, baseball is not a big sport in Paris or France, but it's going to be in the Olympics now in Tokyo, and it's not going to be in Paris. It's going to be again in LA. Why? Because the two biggest baseball markets are Japan and the United States of America. So the games must be a representation of what the people actually want. The Olympic movement is keeping its eye on esports. It hasn't said no to it, but nor has it said yes. But because it's such a rising superstar of interaction, a whole niche of a community, they've changed the way that you've engaged with fans. They have the ability to have an event strictly digitally. It is something that's such an anomaly that you must pay attention to. But it doesn't fall within the box of what the Olympic movement is. You can't test it. You can't measure certain things in the same way that we have in the past. Will it enter the format? Not yet. Can it? I think LA would be the best opportunity. After LA, we can see. But it's going to be such a monster that if you don't get ahead of it, you're going to lose it to the point where it will never want to join it, like cricket. There's a reason why cricket, for example, one of the biggest sports in the world, is not in the Olympic movement, which is also another argument that we'll save for another time.
Perfect. Thank you so much for answering, man. Appreciate it.
All right, so with that, I mean, like, I think we had a good hour of great conversation. Mikel, first and foremost, like, thank you so much for being part of the podcast, for sharing your insights and your thoughts. And I mean, like, it was a great conversation. And to all of you, you know, Lana, Pedro, Fanny, Alberto, Nikki, Diogo, and Ryan, you know, it was a pleasure having you part of it. I hope all of you enjoyed it. Like I said, it was our first try on something a little bit different, but we really appreciate your feedback. And I think everyone can say it was really insightful, really great. And with every video we do, we always finish with some Norwegians. I guess, Fanny, you already know this. So we always finish with "Vi snakkes," which means see you later in Norwegian. So there you go.